There's a part of that C.S. Lewis quote that I actually don't agree with. He said that writing a good popular book on another subject may be more effective in reaching the world than direct apologetics works. I don't think that's true. Even if it were true, that wouldn't negate the fact that we would still need to continue with apologetics anyway. And of course, C.S. Lewis himself knew this because after he wrote Narnia, he wrote direct apologetics works like Mere Christianity, the Screwtape Letters, and The Problem of Pain, amongst many others. In fact, most of C.S. Lewis's writings were direct apologetics. And I would venture to guess that in the final analysis, those direct apologetics works have done more over the years to convince people about God than the Chronicles of Narnia have done. There's nothing really to replace directly confronting theological issues and speaking plainly about them and reasoning with each other about these things. And there's definitely nothing to replace the direct preaching of God's word and plainly talking to people about the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. All that being said, nevertheless, making art with the Christian worldview merely latent within it so that we might smuggle Christian ideas into culture remains a relevant goal. And it does serve an important purpose strategically, I would say. And I would liken that purpose to a farmer ploughing the hard ground first in order to make it softer and more receptive to the seed that will then follow. I don't know how many people have watched The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and said immediately afterwards, do you know what, I'm going to become a Christian now. Probably not many, maybe some, but probably not many. But where that story serves a purpose strategically is that it perhaps softened people up to Christian ideas. It introduced them to Christian thinking, perhaps even for the first time. Maybe it piqued their interest. Maybe they left the movie theater thinking, I'm going to find a Bible and read the story that was based on. Or maybe I'll go and read Mere Christianity or the Screwtape Letters. Maybe the allegories helped them to understand some Christian themes that they didn't understand before. And it made them think about why Jesus had to die. It just softens up the ground. It softens them up to being more receptive to Christian ideas, so that when direct apologetics is employed or direct preaching of the word is employed, it doesn't just bounce off the ground, the hard ground anymore. Maybe some of the seeds that are being dropped now start to take root in them because they've already been introduced to these ideas through the movies and the art and the music, things that they would otherwise never have known. Maybe I can explain this best if I again reverse things and talk about it from the other direction. I'm sure that the Walt Disney Company doesn't think that if they smuggle gay characters into their movies, they're going to instantly convert people's thinking towards homosexuality. So you could ask, well, why are they doing it then? It must serve some ideological purpose if they feel it's so important to represent gay characters on the screen and get them in front of people's eyes and ears. And the answer to that is by just exposing people to homosexuality on screen, even if very briefly, they're desensitizing people. They're normalizing it in society. They are softening people up to be more receptive to the whole concept. Well, that's what Christian art can do in the other direction. It maybe doesn't instantly make people think, I'm going to become a Christian now, but it can just plow that hard ground and make people more receptive to the Christian message when it comes at a later date. It can very subtly influence them and make them more open to direct communication, direct apologetics, the direct preaching of the word at a later date. So imagine if the next time you go to the movie theater to watch a rom-com, and the main characters just don't sleep together until after marriage. And it's not a Christian movie, it's just a regular movie in a regular movie theater, and sexual purity isn't even the main focus of this movie. It's not called purity or anything like that. It's not even what the movie is all about. It's just a regular great story about two people getting together, the ups and downs, and the hilarious misunderstandings that therefore ensue. But with this one difference, the main characters don't sleep together until after marriage. Now, people are not going to leave the cinema thinking, I'm going to become a Christian now because I've seen that. But that's not really the point. The point is that they're now softened up to the idea of Christian sexual ethics. They've been normalized a bit. They're now considering them in a new and more positive light. Maybe the conversation on the way home in the car is, hey, did you notice that they didn't move in together or even sleep together until after marriage? Yeah, it's quite sweet. Yeah, I think so too. I suppose it made married life a bit more special afterwards, the fact they hadn't been living together and sleeping together. Yeah, probably. The ground is just a little bit more soft now, so that when we speak in a more direct way about this, part of the job has already been done by the art. Maybe because of that movie, they already now see an advantage in waiting, and they're more receptive to our message. Imagine on the way home in the car, someone turns on the radio, and it's not Christian radio, it's just regular radio. But there's a song with a Christian idea latent within it. Maybe it's a song about there being hope of life after death, and maybe someone in the car has just lost a grandparent or a parent, and it really resonates with them, and they just start thinking, yeah, I like that idea. I wish I had that hope. I wonder where they get that hope from. And maybe they get home and they turn on the TV and there's a character on their favorite show, and for a split second, you see him reading the Bible. And attention isn't drawn to it. There are no big red shiny arrows pointing at it going, look, it's a Bible. He's reading a Bible. In the same way that there are no big red shiny arrows pointing at the gay characters in Disney movies. In fact, you often need to freeze frame some of these Disney movies to see it because it just happens so quickly and it just makes you question for a second. Was that a gay character just there? Well, what if Christian ideas and worldviews were just being sprinkled into the stories that we make in the same way? Someone is very briefly seen reading a Bible or praying before a meal or maybe praying before bedtime. It's just very subtly normalizing these things and plowing the ground for more direct apologetics at a later date. J. Gresham Machen, the founder of Westminster Theological Seminary, said, "False ideas are the greatest obstacles to the reception of the gospel. We may preach with all the fervour of a reformer, and yet succeed only in winning a straggler here and there if we permit the whole collective thought of the nation or of the world to be controlled by ideas which, by the resistless force of logic, prevent Christianity from being regarded as anything more than a harmless delusion. Under such circumstances, what God desires us to do is destroy the obstacle at the root." So he's basically saying that all the world is currently flooded with false ideas, and that has confused people and made the ground very hard for even passionate preaching. But through our art, through the things that we make, we can flood the world with the Christian message in all kinds of creative ways to soften that ground up, to make people more receptive to our message. It works in tandem with the direct preaching and the direct apologetics. It's a strategy, it's a tactic, if you like. Like I said in the previous episode, we're always very wary of this being done to us, being desensitized to worldly ideas through secular art. So why don't we, as C.S. Lewis said, attack the enemy's lines of communication and do the same thing back? Flood the world with Christian ideas, normalize them, soften the ground. If we think that's a worthwhile endeavour, and we may not, but if we do, a good strategy to pursue, then the main thing that we need to do next is simply make good art. Make irresistible art. Make the best art there is of all kinds. I don't think I've ever talked about this before on camera, but way back in the day, before the Fuel Project began and I'd ever written a single book or made a single video, I was trying to think of creative and effective ways to make an impact for God's kingdom in the world through this ministry. And most of those ideas have never come to pass because due to time constraints and resource constraints, I basically realized there's only so much that one person can do. So none of these ideas have ever happened, but I had wanted originally, on top of what I currently do, make books and videos, to use the Fuel Project as a platform for creative people to use their talents for God's glory. So, if there were any Christian musicians making music, artists and bands, they could release their music through this platform. I started a store in the hope that Christian designers would create t-shirts and these would be worn out in the world and they would start conversations. I remember there was a Christian summer music festival called Frenzy many years ago that was held here in Scotland, and the guy decided to wind it up, so I emailed him to talk about continuing it but with a Fuel rebrand. I wanted to put on art and photography exhibitions in towns and cities with Christian artists only, maybe even do some movies and documentaries, put on debates also in town halls around the world. But one of the key ideas is that a lot of this stuff wouldn't necessarily be branded as Christian art. The first question that I would ask is this art good? Is this the kind of thing that people would actually want to watch and listen to? If so, we make this thing and we make it brilliant, we make it excellent, we make it so good. And then the Christian message will bubble up from within it. And then people might think, Maybe I'll watch some of those Fuel Project videos. Maybe I'll watch Trench or Stay Free or The Coming Summer or An Answer Season or something like that. It becomes a doorway to the other stuff, if you like. Now, again, you may think that's a good idea and you may not, but since we're passing this way, I just thought I'd take some time to talk about it because I don't think I ever have before, and I just thought I'd place it before you for your consideration. If we as Christians make really good art, we may not only strengthen and inform the church and relate to the church, but we could also reach the wider world as well. And I think that would just be a really good thing if we could.